Hi there guys, got a video here for you today on the Cricket 2 Tactical, and in this one what we're going to be doing is remaking the adjuster screw for the regulator. Now the reason that we're doing this is I've recently discovered a little problem with the standard design. What I've noticed is over time the reg set pressure changes substantially. So in my previous Cricket 2 video you'll notice that we rebuilt the rifle and reset the reg pressure to around 80 bar. I've recently rechecked this pressure and it's dropped down to around 73, so a drop of 7 bar. Now all regulators will have a little bit of settle, but on a standard regulator I would expect between 1 and 3 bar of change, but the 7 bar that this regulator has dropped is a little extreme. Now I believe the reason for that is because the adjuster screw on the standard regulator is made from plastic, and over time with the forces involved I think the plastic is slightly deforming and changing the reg set pressure. Now to be fair to the original adjuster screw, once the reg pressure has settled it doesn't seem to change anymore, but I'd much rather be able to just accurately and reliably set the pressure of the regulator to what I want. So we're going to be remaking the adjuster screw in brass and then using a peak tip on the end, and that'll seal against the reg piston. Now I'm going to be experimenting with tip material, as both peak and Delrin do have their advantages and disadvantages, but the only real way to tell what material is going to be best in this application is to try both and pick the best. As we are remaking the unit, there are a couple little changes that I want to make to the design as well. For starters, we're going to be making the adjuster screw slightly longer than the original, and that's going to allow us to include a lock nut, which will just help reduce any possible fluctuations in reg set pressure. The other minor change that we're going to be making is instead of drilling through the adjuster screw and then using something like an Allen key to adjust the reg pressure, we're going to be milling a hex nut on the end to allow us to use a spanner. With that all said, the reg adjuster screw is pretty much finished, so what I'll do is get you over to the bench, get you a good look at the component, and then we'll install it into the regulator. Right then, and here we have the components ready to be installed into the regulator. So we have our new set here, the small adjuster screw and also the lock nut, compared against the old adjuster screw at the back there. If I give you a look at it here we have it. We have the adjuster screw, lock nut, the small sealing end, so this end is the end that seals on the piston, and as I said in the making of, that's now peak on this one. We will be experimenting with a Delrin one at a later date, but for now this one is peak. You can see I've already tested the adjuster screw in the regulator just to make sure it actually works, and I'm happy to say it does. To install it into the regulator it's nice and simple. All we need to do is take the adjuster screw, screw it into the end of the regulator. It is a fairly nice fit, but I didn't want any play between the housing and the adjuster screw, so I made it a nice tight fit, but it's still able to be screwed in by hand. So there it's bottomed out into the body of the regulator. You can undo it and then screw a lock nut down. As always, this is just a standard piston opposed adjuster screw type regulator, and to adjust the reg, screwing the adjuster screw out increases reg pressure and screwing it in decreases reg pressure. And we can fine adjust that with a 9mm spanner, so that fits on the end there. We can adjust, and then using an 11mm spanner we can come through and lock the lock nut off. There we have it. So I'll get this installed into my reg tester, set it to 80 bar, and then I'll take you down range and we'll show you the results. And here's our setup down Pete's airgun farm. So we're in the 50-yard range with our rifle set up on the bench. We're shooting through a chronograph and our targets are going to be laid out at 50 yards. We tested the adjuster screw pretty much all day on Saturday, and I'm happy to say it did make a positive difference. If we look at the before and after feet per second spreads, you can see that with the brass adjuster screw fitted, we did gain a small improvement to the consistency of the rifle, and whilst it's not a massive difference, there doesn't seem to be any negatives or drawbacks so far. There is more testing to be done though. As I said earlier, I do want to experiment with a Delrin tip rather than the peak. And after disassembling the rifle and rechecking the regulator set pressure, I'm glad to say that it hasn't changed. I set it to 79.5, and when we rechecked the reg set pressure, it had only drifted to about 80.5, so a 1 bar change. Like I said earlier, all regulators are going to have a settle pressure, but I'm much more confident in the brass adjuster now. I do still have one minor issue with the regulator though, and that is when we shoot the rifle down to just above reg pressure, it starts to go a bit wavy. Feet per second spread opens up a bit, and the rifle is a little less accurate. This did happen with the original plastic adjuster screw, so I know it's not to do with the new brass one that we've made, but it is something that I'm going to be looking into. But that'll have to wait for another video. For now though, we'll take a look at the groups and then I'll let you go. So these are all 5-shot groups done at 50 yards using a sub 12-pound rifle. And as you can see there, when we compare the groups to the size of my thumb, we got some nice little ones there. The only thing I will say is please ignore the groups on the right hand side in the middle row. What happened there was I loaded 2 different pellets into the same magazine. So I had a bunch of open tins on the table. I loaded up 844 pellets and JSB Express pellets into the same mag and shot them back to back. So that was my fault, not the rifles. But there we have it. That's going to about do it for this one, guys. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.